welcome to Sarah's Stamping Retreat. So today I'm going to share the next edition of our paper pad user. So this is a series where I'm making cards to use up a whole pad of pattern paper. So I'll put a link to the playlist below if this is the first time you've seen this, because we've already had 4 instalments of this series. So I'm not going to go through the whole paper pad this time because a lot of you have seen that already. And if you haven't, you can go back and see. I think in the first and second part of the series, I went through the whole paper pad to show you what was in it. But today, I just want to show you this page because today we're going to focus on the border pages, because I think that a lot of paper packs have these border pages, and I think it's nice to have some different ways on hand to be able to use them. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to just cut them up into strips. I'm going to line each one up across the cutting part of my trimmer, and then I can cut across. So then I'm left with all these lovely borders. So I don't think I'm going to use this one today because I'm going to use those for tag cards in a later video, but the rest of these I'm going to use today. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the cards that need the biggest pieces of border. So obviously you want to use up the bigger pieces first, and then the ones that you're left with we can use for cards where we only need smaller pieces. So this is an A6 card blank, so it's 4 1/8 by 5 7/8 inches, and that's navy blue cardstock from Paperbacks Limited. And for this first card, I'm literally going to lay strips across the card and just make nice panels. So what I can do is just lay it across here so that I get a rough idea of how much glue I need on it. I'm starting with this big panel in the middle because I want that to kind of be the focus, and then I can just chop that off. And then I'm going to use the other ones to kind of accent that. So I might put the smaller one across the top. And then I'm going to mirror that with this other gold one along the bottom. And you'll notice that I'm laying on the whole strip and then cutting off the ends because I don't want to waste any. Whereas if I cut it first, then I'm more likely to waste some. And I think maybe we'll add some pinks on the edges. And you'll notice that even though I've used different borders the whole way through, I've kind of made a bit of a symmetry with the colours, so it looks quite kind of like put together. So then we're going to be making mostly thank you cards today, mostly because I just bought these new dies from Alex Siberia Designs. So this one is the large thanks die, and this one is the Thanks Creative die, and I just wanted to have a play with them essentially. So they're really nice. That you can see here I've used the dark blue background of the large one and the gold for the detail, but obviously you can use the detail or the background on their own. And also this one has a coordinating large thanks hot foil plate, so you can use that and die cut it with the outline die. And then there's also this thanks here. And this one layers up in the same way. We'll use that one later. I'm going to use this for now on here. I think actually that looks quite nice just in the middle like that. So for my next card, I'm going to use these 2 borders. And then I've also got this, which I've cut off the edge of one of these pieces. You can see that one there. So I'm going to glue that along this edge here. And I'm kind of trying to position that so that you'll be able to see what it says. I think there might be a tiny bit cut off the B and a tiny bit cut off that E. You'll still be able to see what it says. And then I'm going to glue that onto there. I'm just leaving a little gap between that and the show grace. Then I'm going to cover that gap with this. And then you can see this is the other thanks layered up. So I'm just going to add some glue on the back of it. So then I'm going to finish this off with a few of these cherry blossom enamel dots. So there's that one finished. So I just thought I'd bring this in a second because I want to show you some different ways of using this die. So you can see they're all gold on navy. I just want to show you like two different types of gold. One's a bit more matte and one's a bit more shiny. I was just using up some scraps with those, that's why they're different. And then also I've used the hot foil plate on this one. You can see it kind of gives that flatter look, but I really like that too. So I just wanted to show you the difference between them all. So I'll be using a mix of those on the cards. So the next card we're going to make is really simple. I'm just going to use this border and I've just cut it down to fit that at the bottom. I'll need to cut a little bit off at the top. So I'm just going to pop a little bit of gold cardstock down there. And I just want it peeking out. I don't want too much of it. So then I'm just going to glue those at the top and the bottom of my card. And I can just chop that little bit of excess off there. And then I'm just going to have my thanks going across this centrepiece. So that's a really nice simple one we've got there. Then with this one I'm going to do a kind of simple bit of like basic paper weaving. So I'm just going to glue this at the top. So I'm only attaching it right at the top just for now. And then I've kind of set out how I want my papers to go. So I'm just going to secure these a little bit at the top as well. And then I'm going to secure these over this side. And again, I'm just gluing it a tiny bit here. So then I can weave these in and out of each other. So I can take this pink one over the blue, under the pink, and over the other blue. And then I'm going to cut the end off. And then I'm going to glue that end down. Then the second one, I'm going to go over the middle one and under the two blues. I'm going to cut that off up here. And then this goes over the blue, under the pink, and over the other blue. And then I'm going to glue down these ends too. So I'll cut them off first. And then I'm going to add that sentiment to my card. And then I'm going to scatter about a few little gems. So this for me is the easiest way to add gems that don't have adhesive on the back. It's just to put a little blob of glue on the cardstock and then use one of these pickup pencils just to add the gems to the card. So then for my next one, I'm going to use another bit of this. So I'm going to cut that to the same height as my card front. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a panel the same size as this out of my card front. So this is nearly 2 inches. I want it to be pretty central. So I'm going to cut 1 1/8 inches off this side of the card. And then I want to leave 1 1/8 inches on the other side of the card. I think I miscalculated that because that is quite a bit smaller than that. So I'm going to cut another 1/8 off. So it's actually going to be 1 inch on each side. So I'm going to cut this down to 1 inch as well. And then I'm going to add foam strips down either side of this panel. And I'm going to peel the tops off these. And then I'm going to add some strips of gold along the top there. And then I'm going to just cut off the excess from the ends. And then I'm going to line this up on here so I can see how much overlap I'll have on each side. I can see the amount of gap I need to leave now. So I'm going to grab my glue and I'm going to glue this bit on. And then I'm going to make sure that this lines up with the back of my card, and then I can glue this side on. And then I'm going to pop my thanks across there. So I'm only going to glue it on the two sides, so I want it on the T and on the S. So I actually made another one of these off camera with this border. We've got two of those, and obviously I added the gems down there as well. Then for this next one, I'm going to cut this floral here out of this blue floral piece. So then I've got this selection of the borders. So I'm going to use this one and this one. This bloom where you're planted, I want to be the sentiment on this one. So I want that to kind of be central along the bottom. And I really like the bloom where you're planted sentiment for like someone that's having a bit of a hard time at the moment. Or someone that you want to kind of give a bit of courage or self-confidence to. So then I'm going to chop those ends off. And then I'm going to use this, but I just want a little bit of gold popping out of each side. I'm just going to cut this down to the side of my card blank. And then I'm going to glue some little bits of gold to the back. And again, I just want them peeking over each side. Just feel like it kind of helps finish the card. It looks better than just lining all the pieces smack up against each other. I want that to go like there. And I want that to tuck in there. So I'm going to glue this on next. Actually, what I think I might do to give some dimension to the card is just glue this bit down. And then I'm just going to pop some small foam pads just behind these flowers that are hanging off. And then I can pop those back down, but they're going to just be kind of like raised there. And then I'm going to pop some glue behind here. And then I feel like I'm going to add a few gems to this one too. So there's that one finished. So then I'm kind of looking at what I've got left, and I've still got a big strip of this, and I really like this card, so I'm actually going to make another one of these cards. And there's a second one of those. So then for my next card, I've cut a set of frames from navy cardstock and a set from gold foil cardstock. And I've done that using this fine framed cover die from Ultimate. And I'm going to turn them over so that the back's facing up, and I'm going to alternate them. So I'm going to have the wide ones as the navy and the slim ones the gold. And I think to keep these in place temporarily, I'm just going to use a bit of this yellow tape, and I'm going to add that onto my craft board. I'm going to add some at the bottom as well. So I'm going to use a piece of double-sided adhesive sheet just to glue this in together. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel these pieces off, just the side ones for now, and then I'll pop some of these behind the frame. Then I'm going to take these bits off. And then this is the only one of the cards that I've made a slightly different size. This one's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 because that's the shape of the frames. And then I'm going to use this thanks. And I'm just going to glue that across there. And there's that one done. And to be honest, I think that I did the frames that way so that I could glue these pieces to the back. But it was a bit awkward, so I think if I was to do it again, I would glue these pieces onto the actual card and then glue the frames over the top. So then these bits are all I've got left now, so I'm going to make one more card with this. So then for this final one, I've got just a card front made out of the navy cardstock, and I'm going to take a wedge out of it. So I'm going to do that like that. I'm going to take another piece off like that. So I'm going to lose this piece. So then I'm going to add some glue along the edges. And then I'm just going to add a bit of the gold underneath. And I'm going to trim that in there. So then I'm going to line this up on my card front so that I can see kind of how much space I've got to work with. And you see I've got barely anything down here and a lot up here. So I'm obviously going to use some of these bigger pieces up here. I'm just going to glue that under. I'm just kind of using these as a guide just to see where I want my pieces to go. And where I've got this little piece here, I know in this corner I've only got a small gap, so I'm going to pop that over there. So then I'm going to use some of these really tiny pieces in the corners. And I've used a lot of these kind of little pieces of gold cardstock on these cards as well, so I've got quite a few offcuts from those, so I'm going to put those on here too, so they don't go to waste either. And I'm just keeping on putting these back on to check that I don't have any bits that are kind of not in the right place or whatever. So then I'm going to use some of these foam strips to pop these pieces up. So that's a really nice way of using up all those little scraps. I'm really pleased with how that came out. And literally that's all of the bits that I've got left. So we've used up pretty much the whole sheet. So then I'm just going to add my sentimental. So there's that final card finished. So let's bring the other cards in. So I didn't actually set out today with an agenda as to how many cards I was going to make. I just wanted to use up that borders page. But we've actually managed to make 10 cards with not a lot else other than the borders. And we've used up almost every scrap of that border page. Obviously I put the tags strip aside earlier. But then, as I showed you, we've got those 3 tiny scraps left. And we've made 10 gorgeous cards. So I really hope that you like them. I'd love to know which is your favourite. Please let me know in the comments below. Obviously where there's only 9 cards here, it's because there's 2 of those ones. If you enjoyed today's video, I'd really appreciate you clicking like below. You can also press subscribe if you'd like to see future videos. If you press the bell button and select all, then YouTube will also notify you when I've got a new video available. All of the products that I've used to create today's cards are listed in the description below. And there's also a link there to my blog where you can find a picture supply list if that helps you find what you're looking for. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you again soon.